You're rocking WGPO 1350 and WGPO1350.com. It's about that time for the coffee talk right here on your praise station. Well, before we go into our program on this morning, let's have a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for our last night's sleep and our early rising on today. We're asking you, God, to anoint our participants on this morning that they may be anointed to give us the information that we need to make our families, our community, our brothers and sisters better than what we are on today. We give you thanks and we give you praise. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen and thank God. And Michelle Pleasant, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bishop.
Thank you. We know prayer works. How you doing this morning, Bishop?
Man, I am doing well, sir. How about yourself?
We are great, man. You know, all of us are up and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but whatever that means, but we're here. But let me get started. Every day we rise is a great day to be alive. And the Seven Cities Forums of Hampton Roads presents Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And we have our host, Leah Drake-Stitt.
Good morning, James.
Good morning. Thomas the Colonel Chapman.
Good morning.
And yours truly, James Slim Overton. And we have a special guest this morning. We have Angel Jones, who is the new Portsmouth City Manager. Good morning, Ms. Jones.
Good morning, everyone.
So glad to have you. And we're going to get right into it because I'm sure the hosts have a lot of questions, and a lot of the things since you've been here have been talked about, but I'd like to mention a few things. Well, the first thing I'm going to mention that you're a 1984 sum cum laude graduate of Virginia Union University.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I had to start off with that. But anyway, and you also have certificates from the University of Virginia and Senior Executive Institute Program and the National Forum for Black Public Administrators Executive Leadership Program. And you're also a veteran, tied captain from the United States Army Reserve. You know, did 10 years of that with all the other things you were doing.
Yes. I've been busy.
Yes, you sure have. But anyway, we want to get right into it. I'll start with this. The first thing I know when one of the things I've had the pleasure of doing is serving on quite a few different boards and commissions, two being the Planning Commission and the EDA, along with other commissions. And what I've noticed over the years that I've served on those boards and seen a lot of different city managers come through, one of the first things is that relationship between city manager and the city departments. And that's one of the first things when you come in, you want to make sure you put together, have that relationship in place before you can move forward. So how has that been going so far that you've been there?
It's been very informative. One of the things I do going into any new organization is to try to assess the strengths as well as the weaknesses. And I've been doing that internally as well as externally. And so what I have done is sit down with each of the department heads and talk about my expectations, talk about how I like to operate, not focusing on previous administrations, but really looking forward as to some of the objectives and the priorities that we have before us. And getting a sense from them of their assessment of where they think their department is and what needs additional, or whether they need additional resources or whether they're good to go. And so I'm right in the middle of those assessments, and we're taking action as we go along. If I see things that need fixing, I give directives to get those fixed immediately, depending on what those issues are. So it's just a transitional process that we're going through. And so far it's been very good. And as I said before, informative.
Yes, because I know that's where you really have to start. And one of the things I noticed the other areas that you have, other cities you have served as city manager before, do you see any similarities with what the issues they had compared to what Portsmouth is facing today?
Yes, fortunately, with city administration, a lot of the issues are similar from city to city. Really, the only thing that changes are the priorities, the elected officials in terms of what their focus is, and then the community in terms of what their priorities are. But fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, I've always served in cities that had limited resources. So that's always forced me, as well as the staff, to be creative, to look for solutions outside of taxes to our citizens, because they're usually on the high end. And we do not want to impact the citizens any more than we need to. The one thing that I have noticed here that's very apparent is that we have not maintained our infrastructure.
Right.
And a lot of the facilities here are aged facilities, 20 plus years old. And to not have maintained them at a level that they should have been maintained is going to require some significant investment. And normally that's not the stuff that everyone wants to put money in, because it doesn't get you a lot of attention. It's stuff that you need to do. But again, that's going to be one of those things. I'm in the middle of staff and I are in the middle of doing a comprehensive facilities assessment, so that we will be able to brief the council on the status of our facilities. And that includes our public school facilities as well. So it will be a combined facilities assessment so that we can prioritize those needs in an informed manner. The other reason why that's so important is we should not have our employees working in conditions that are not acceptable.
Exactly.
And that is unacceptable to me.
Mhm.
See that we've allowed our employees to be in facilities that do not present the minimum level of working conditions that should be acceptable. So though that's kind of been my priority, to one, get an understanding of what the community's priorities are, as well as the council's priorities, and then align my vision according to those priorities. But those basic things that I look for going into any organization is kind of where the facility, what's the status of the facilities, what's the status of the employees, are there policies and procedures in place to ensure that we can hold employees accountable, and then equity. Are we treating our employees, all employees, in an equitable manner?
Very good. Very good.
Yes, and the last thing, and before, it's so important to have that morale of the
Mhm.
city employees, because they are the direct people that the public has to deal with, and it's important that the public feels comfortable in dealing with the people that are on the front lines. One last thing for this moment before the other host, co-hosts come in. You mentioned about the community involvement, and since you've been here, it's been a little about 2 months, and I've seen you just about everywhere, and that's important, and it's going to be important, especially when you do these facilities studies.
Right.
Certain communities have buildings that not designated historic, but to that community,
Right.
so
Right.
you have cognizant of that, when you
Right.
go into facility study.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cole?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I was really thrilled to meet you at the Truxton event.
Yes.
And it was a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you more often.
Yes.
But I have back in the 70s, there was a song written, the students used to sing, "Portsmouth is for people, all types of people." However, in recent years, it seems the spirit of Portsmouth has diminished and has been more people putting Portsmouth down.
Mm.
Not only are the local people putting Portsmouth down, but I know I have friends in other cities who will go on the Facebook page to look at the Portsmouth City Council, and they will come back with all types of statements about what's going on in Portsmouth. What can we do to make Portsmouth the way it was in the 70s, as far as people getting along, as far as telling our story, so that others will not tell these stories that they're telling about the city of Portsmouth?
Yeah, that is something that is very important to me. And as we live in a society today, that's what I consider to be a call out society. We call out people on social media if their view is different than ours.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about coming together, but it's about getting whatever I want done. And I think where I would like to start and where I have already started is finding those things that we are in unity about, and focus on those and not focus on our differences.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get to the table, and Martin Luther King said it best, when he said, there is good in the most evil of us, and there's some evil in the.
That's right.
So if we can look for the good, I think we can start to change those perceptions. But I also think we have to be responsive. And as I've said to the employees, each employee has to be an ambassador for the city. We have
Exactly.
to believe that we can achieve the best. And if we are the ones that are saying that Portsmouth is this and Portsmouth, I don't accept that, because I always feel that I'm a part of the best.
Exactly.
And to the community, I want it to be known that I am proud and grateful to be in this wonderful city so that we can move forward. And this is the opportunity for us to show some unity and to come together around those things that are going to move us forward. And I would say that each and every city council member has one thing in common. They want the best for the city of Portsmouth, every last one of them. Now, the methodology may differ,
Mm-hmm.
but they are united around wanting the best for this city. And it's my responsibility to get them aligned on those goals and objectives that will help us achieve that.
And I know you've just been there for 2 months, but what's your vision on building a robust economy? I know you've come from places that have had economy issues and you were able to bring them forth again. What's your goal for Portsmouth, Virginia?
Well, my goal is very simple, actually. It's to capitalize on those things that we have as an advantage, as an asset. And our economic development department has been doing yeoman's work in attracting business to this area. Now, of course, it takes a while for it to take root, and there are some things in the works that are really going to fill the gaps that we have in this community. And my concern is not so much about bringing the business, it's how do we supply the business with employees that are qualified to do the work. Now, there's plenty of jobs that are high paying jobs. We're anchored in our downtown by two large employers, between the port and the Navy Hospital. There's plenty of opportunity there, but we have got to get our Portsmouth residents trained, because the skill set that are necessary for the jobs today going forward are not the skills that were necessary years ago.
Right.
Well, that's the connection that we need to make, and that's why we've initiated our workforce development program that's going to start training Portsmouth residents so they can qualify for those positions, because that first and foremost is going to help address a lot of the issues we have in this community. So continue to work on the processes that we're working on, ensuring that we're open for business. One of the things that the council has already done in the short time that I've been here is eliminated a roadblock for developers or businesses coming to only need one reading. Prior, it was necessary for them to have 2 readings, even if there was unanimous approval for the project. That's time and that's money for the developer. So any way that we can eliminate additional time and cost for developers is going to help incentivize developers to come to Portsmouth.
And my last question, Colonel, because I know you want to jump in here, is that with the casino, I know you went to Philadelphia to look at the sister or brother facility of the facilities we're planning here in Portsmouth. And what was your opinion coming from Philadelphia, having observed the casino there?
Quite frankly, I didn't really have to go to Philadelphia to know what casinos can do, because I came from Maryland.
Right.
Maryland has plenty. And one of the things that I look for with casinos is the ancillary activity. they will bring a lot of different companies that are affiliated, whether it's restaurants, hotels, you name it. Those will all of a sudden, now that we have this casino approved, we will have more interest in coming to Portsmouth. So I went to Philadelphia to get a sense of how this particular ownership works. How do they relate to the community? How do they partner with the community? How do they deal with those issues that come out of casinos, whether it's perceptions of crime or anything of that nature? And I found them to be very upfront. I found a lot of the testimonies of the employees that I was able to talk to offline that talked about the family atmosphere in that organization, as well as a lot of the evidence that I could see from their policies and practices, that they are very committed to any community that they go into, and they're willing to work with the community.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning. How you doing this morning?
Fine.
Yes. It's interesting that you talked about doing this 2 months that you've been here, this assessment period. One is you had two, the concept of one, actually two concepts, one or two prongs. The one you're looking at meeting with your management team, and the other one you had a concept of through the looking at the buildings as an offshoot of taking care of your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And as a retired healthcare administrator and a nurse from the Army, whenever I went to a duty station, that is what I tried to do, is you meet with your department heads. But I would tell you also is that have your secretary schedule some of the workers at the other end of the spectrum to get their opinion, because they're going to give you the unvarnished truth of what's really going on from that flowery thing that the administrators of those heads of departments are going to talk about, because they're only going to give you the good stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you off, but I'm smiling because I take it a step further. Not
yes.
only I take meet with the department heads, but I'm a manager that leaves them walking around.
Yeah.
And so I actually go to the sites, and I have been to the sites, and I can speak to the conditions of the sites personally. So there's nothing that they can tell me that I haven't already seen. Plus, I have an open door policy that allows any employee that wants to have a conversation with me to know that I'm approachable and that they can come and sit down. And no matter what it is, if they even want to talk about my leadership, they can. But the one thing that I've noticed in the city of Portsmouth is there's this mentality of us against them.
Yes.
And this them is management versus employee. And they come in and they say, well, I work for you. And I correct them every opportunity I get. You don't work for me. You work with me, and I work with you. The only hierarchy we have in the city of Portsmouth is based on responsibility. Not so.
Yeah, I'll even take it further. When you talk about you work with the employee, and I'm even talking about to the other end of the spectrum, the janitor.
Yes.
I always told as a colonel always said to the private, you know what, I work for you, or because one, we're all paid by the taxpayer, but we're all in this together. And if I can improve your life, I improve that you go out and work harder, improve the organization, and we all look good in the end.
You are so correct. Yes, absolutely.
So the other piece to that is you talk about the open door policy. Everybody has an open door policy, but that's why I always had my secretary schedule and I want to see the private or the contractor who's doing the floors or the walls or whatever. I want to get them to talk to them for 15 minutes or so without their supervisor looking over their head.
Exactly.
And then I said, give me the real dope then. Tell me.
I got you.
That's a good piece there. So, yes. I cut you off. Did I cut you off?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Yes. And then so you also talked about the two main industries what we have here is defense and healthcare at the Naval Hospital. And then so when you look at educating the workforce We had talked about, like, in previous shows, like in Norcom used to have the LPN program that back in the day, and those other kind of programs for VOTEC and whatever for our kids coming up through high school and all the way, and they punch them out to TCC and to our great HBCUs like in Hampton and North State. And what's that other school that you went to?
You know, greatness doesn't need to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
But is there any plans that or continuance or expansion of those type programs for those who are not going to go to the universities, but to expand those programs for job training?
Exactly. As a matter of fact, yes. At our last meeting, Dr. Bracy and I talked about that very thing. We talked about the need to look at the technical programs, and even looking at the middle school level instead of not waiting until high school, but
Good.
at what we can create at the middle school level. So yes, we're in conversations about that, and we're hopeful that we can launch something very soon.
Yeah. The one other thing too is one we never talk about is our apprenticeships, especially in the hand sector, you know, for the electricians, who's my brother's electrician, and the pipe fit, plumbing and those kind of things. And so we can expand those in the private sector, just not in the apprenticeships in the shipyards. And that's one thing we should look at. But that also starts in the high schools, so I can get my math and sciences down. Because if I don't get those down in the or go above the minimum level while in high school, I'll never get through an apprenticeship.
Correct. And we're looking at all of that to ensure that we're creating hope and dreams in our young people. I mean, that is a primary focus. That's what drove me back into government, quite frankly, is because I just feel that we need to do more. We need to instill hopes and dreams in our young people, and cut down on this trend that's going on nationally with the crime and violence that's in our communities.
Exactly. And looking at crimes and violence in the community, where are we with finding a police chief?
We are getting down to the ninth inning. It is around the corner. I'm glad you asked. We are planning a community forum in the end of July the 29th, actually, at IC Norcom. This will be an opportunity for the community to weigh in. We're asking the community to submit questions up through the 17th, I believe it is. This will all be posted on our social media and our advertising, our marketing outlets. But we're going to have interviews on the 29th, internal with the police department employees as one interview panel, and then with their peers, which would be department heads, the sheriff, in another panel. And then the final, they will also be toured around by police employees. And then the final part will be the community forum, where we will have a moderator, and the moderator will ask the questions that the community has submitted. And then the community will be able to give feedback in terms of the candidates throughout the process.
Okay, you said on the 29th, at what time on the 29th?
6 o'clock, I believe.
6 p.m. And
Yes,
how many candidates do we have so far?
We have narrowed the pool down to 4.
Okay.
That's good.
And people who are truly interested in community policing?
That was the requirement.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
and we will be flushing out.
Good, good.
Well, I'm glad you're fleshing that out. So, you know, as we talk about the hiring this next police chief, I think there's another push. I've seen the signs on the billboards about hiring police officers, and then we need to extend that to the fire department, but with the caveat that the new hirees reflect the percentage in our communities, which has never been done.
Right. And
then I'm a believer in saying if I can't meet, and I hate to use the word quota, to hire some minorities in the police department or fire department in a certain class, I don't hold that class, and hold the chiefs and those other officers accountable for it.
Right. And more importantly, we want not only our police department, but our organization as a whole and all of the organization to reflect the community we serve.
Yes.
And not only reflect the community we serve, but to be culturally competent to understand the community that we're serving.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes.
And, you
Mhm.
know, I'm going, one last question here, James. As well as looking at getting this new police chief in and hiring people to come to work with the police department, the sheriff's department, the fire department, salaries. We are
Yes.
not comparable to the salaries of surrounding cities. So therefore, we lose good people. We train them and then they leave us to go to the cities where they can make more money. I know we don't have the resources that a lot of our surrounding cities have, but what is there in place to kind of get the salaries at least comparable so that we can keep good people in the city of Portsmouth?
Right. One of the things, and that's one of the things that I'm working with the HR department as well as with our CFO. How can we address the salaries that we have with this most recent pay plan that we have? We've pushed our salaries closer in some regards, but we still have an issue with pay compression, and that is that as we push the bottom salary level higher, those employees that have experience and certification, they do not move because the only way to move currently in our system is either through a general wage increase or the position is reclassed or they get promoted. If they're doing the same work, there's no mechanism in place to reward that performance. Now, one of the things that I've talked about to various groups, whether it's the fire union, police union, employees in general, time is not necessarily a value added to the organization. If people are not continuously improving their understanding of what's required for their performance, getting additional certifications, getting information, what's happening in technology regarding their position, if they're not continuously learning, then that does not necessarily equate that time is that value to the organization. So, but that's the only mechanism really that one has other than pay for performance. With pay for performance, it becomes somewhat problematic in that you have what I call the FBI program, and that's not Federal Bureau of Investigation. It's friends, brothers, and in-laws.
That's right.
And so those systems, you know, the people that are in the in crowd, they get the increases. Those that are not do not. And so minorities have not fared well in those systems. So we're working and we're trying to look at best practices to see how other agencies and organizations have addressed this issue. It's not one that I take lightly because pay and benefits are how we demonstrate to our employees that they are valued. The other
Exactly.
of that equation is working conditions. So we're trying to address all components to show employees that they are valued. They're a most important asset in the organization because we're a service organization. And so we need to get it fixed. And that's what I'm charged to do.
I think that's why it's so important that we pick the right chief for police chief for the city of Portsmouth. Morale is a big issue. Everybody's not going to like everything, but the more morale you have, people that have a high morale, it pushes everybody else. And I think the process that we're using, that you're using, we used before in picking the chief, especially the last part of it where you bring in the community so they know exactly. A lot of times, the police chief is picked, and we meet them for the first time. So
Yeah.
with no opportunity to get a gauge on it. But let me go back. Well, before I do that, I want to say we end the radio portion of this at 7. So I want to mention that now. Thank all the listeners. So we'll continue our talk. So the bishop will come in at some time around 7 or a little after to cut us off, but we'll continue on Facebook Live. But Ms. Jones, I saw a video with you and Robert Moore, and I was pleased to see that because, like I mentioned earlier, I was on the EDA, the Economic Development Authority, for 8 years, also serving as chairman. And the economic development department is a driving is the driving
Force.
force to success, and we have to get there. One of the things I saw you mention, you didn't realize the water. We had so much water and how important that was. And back when I was on there, we had some projects coming along that was going to address that, but then the economy sort of went crazy, and we got away from that. What is your vision? I mean, coming here and looking at the water, what is your vision? And one of the things I also say, once we have a vision, hopefully, and this is to our city council members, once we have a vision, regardless of who's on city council, that vision should remain the same. One of the problems we've had in the city of Portsmouth, we have a vision or a plan, and the composition of council changes, and they shift that. And then we end up kind of spinning our wheels. But what would be your vision? You know, I know you're still studying that, but what would be your vision for that waterfront down there that's so valuable to our future?
Yes, my vision is aligned with the city council's vision, which is to maximize the use of get the most benefit from our waterfront property. Of course, that means relocating and moving current city facilities that are on the water to other places. But I just want to point out your comment about creating a vision, and then no matter what council's in there, to ensure that council accepts that vision and moves forward. That's one of the reasons why I believe in transparency, getting the community involved, because it's really the community that should be setting the vision and those priorities for us to implement. Because like any city, whoever the council is where that direction of that city is going to go. Now, hopefully you have your administration that can maintain some semblance of what's been approved, but I've operated in, especially in Oregon, where you had a very strong pro-growth and a very strong no-growth, depending on which council and who the mayor was at the time. And so it's nice to say that they will continue that vision no matter who the council is, but that's not necessarily the case. Staff has to be flexible. They have to understand how to continue to push forward the city's objectives, regardless of who is in the council, because the day-to-day administration falls on the city administrator, the city manager. And yes, they set the policies, they set the vision, but there are things that can still move the city forward regardless of who is in those seats. But it's a very delicate balance of how to, one, get them in a unified position to want to continue to move certain things forward. And as I said earlier, they all agree on that vision, that one thing, but it's the methodology of how you get there is where they're different.
Okay.
And so it's a fine balance, but I just want to point that out. It's not that simple. When you have elected officials that still they're in those positions because of the community they serve has indicated what their priorities are. That's why we need to ensure that everything we do is transparent so that the community knows the results of who they're putting in office and what they're holding them to.
All politics are local.
Yes.
Oh, they're really local. But let me ask you one question too. You know, the tolls have really caused a lot of problems for the city of Portsmouth. Individuals, I even looked to sporting events where people would come from Norfolk, come to Portsmouth for sporting events. But since the tolls, a lot of people are not leaving Norfolk to come to Portsmouth. Do you see anything in the plans with the state to eliminate some of the problems that we're having as far as this toll is concerned?
Absolutely. That is something that's first and foremost on the list. Thank God I'm a Delta and I can approach my lead.
Yes.
In the General Assembly. We gonna have those conversations. And I say that, but in all seriousness, this is the best opportunity to have those discussions because there is a surplus of funds that are coming from the federal level to the state. And the purpose of those funds is infrastructure, as well as looking at impacts to cities that have the characteristics of the city of Portsmouth. And so this is the time to put the money where the talk is. Let's do something to buy down those tolls and ensure that we can have an equitable stance here in the city of Portsmouth and not have barriers to people coming here.
And not only the barriers to people coming here, because I know I talk to a lot of older citizens who they are experiencing these exorbitant bills from Elizabeth River Tunnel, and they can't pay it. That means they can't get their cars a license renewed, and it just puts people in a hardship, because you may have a bill for $200, and some of the seniors may not be looking at that bill. And that bill grows into $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and there's nowhere in the world they can pay that money.
Right. And so, yes, we definitely need to look at that. That's definitely not something that, if there's any opportunity to change that, that opportunity is now. And so we do not want to miss that opportunity.
Leah, didn't they change? I think wasn't that one of the things our legislators changed, that taking that power away from the toll people from holding up, you're able to get your license because
I don't know about your tags on your cars. I need to check into that, because
I think that's one of the things that they came in there.
Well, I hope so, because I have some citizens, some senior citizens who've asked me about it. So I definitely will look into it and
put a cap on how much they can charge you. At like 2,500, it has a cap off there. And then the second thing they did was take that, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll follow up.
Yeah.
To take that responsibility from the toll people, because you owe toll, you can't get your license. That didn't make sense.
Right.
But I think they changed that. I think that's one of the reforms that they did handle when they got in there.
Okay, all right.
But you know what? Speaking of that, and so I just want to segue into we're talking about growth amongst the city of Portsmouth. Is that one, we at Portsmouth Coffee Talk also look at growth. And so if those who are out there listening to us over the airways or through Facebook or YouTube want to send us a donation or want to partner with us, we're accepting those monies, and you can mail it to Portsmouth Coffee Talk at P.O. Box 7664, Portsmouth, Virginia 23707. And then so as I make that commercial break so we can grow, and just like the cities have to collect taxes, we also need monies to expand these kind of programs, so that we have these great guests on that graduate from Union and our other great HBCUs in the area. So, but the other thing you mentioned on the tolls, and I'll get back to that, and you talk about buy down on the with surplus on there. I think personally that is a regressive kind of technique to do it, because it's only temporary. So is there anything in the legislature where you can buy off the debt that is here so we can get rid of the tolls, or pay it like when you have a mortgage, you pay a little bit over it to pay down on the principal, from this ungodly a contract that a Republican governor saddled our cities with?
Yeah, that is, I'm not as up to speed on the tolls and how they came about, but I can assure you that that's one of the things that I will be getting up to speed on and figuring out how to get rid of them altogether. I understand contracts, and I understand how we're held to certain contracts. But if there is a way to get out of it altogether permanently, that would be the first approach. And then anything in between that and what we have now would be an improvement. But again, I'm going to rely on those that know this, intimately, and I need to get up to speed so that I can help push it. And I'm sure I will, because I know that this is important to each of the council members to do something about the tolls.
Perfect.
You mentioned in the Dillon rule that we have here in the state of Virginia, and probably you didn't have to deal with something like that in And
No.
the Dillon rule really restricts, the city government from doing certain things.
Yeah.
So how do you plan on dealing with that, since you understand how that works? And for people that don't know, explain what the Dillon rule is.
Right. The Dillon rule is one where the state has all responsibility unless otherwise stated differently. And so it sets a lot of the criteria for how we issue permits, how we operate, how we address the Chesapeake Bay issues, even in this toll situation. It sets the standards and sets the rules for all of the jurisdictions. Now, I will say from a developer perspective, it's probably a good thing in that no matter which jurisdiction you go into, you have similar costs, you have similar rules. And so that, from that perspective, is excellent. But from the perspective of allowing jurisdictions to do what they see necessary to bring their jurisdiction forward, it's a hindrance because everything has to be legislated. And I'll just say one basic requirement that I've just discovered is the Open Meetings Act, where you cannot have a hybrid meeting even after the pandemic, where it's been demonstrated that you can be effective, you can be in person through Zoom or other platforms that are out there to conduct business. If there's not an emergency order in place, you have to meet in person if you're a voting member of any of those commissions. Now, versus Dillon rule versus home rule, which is the cities that I've been functioning in, it allows the jurisdiction to set certain rules for their particular jurisdiction. So while there are state overarching rules, sales taxes and those types of things, within the each locality, you can establish rules of how you want to conduct business. If you want to have hybrid meetings, your council determines that. And so there's just some vast differences between Dillon rule and home rule. And home rule is a lot more flexible, but it's not as standardized for developers or people trying to come into those localities as the Dillon rule. So you kind of balance those things as to what you're trying to do.
And that's why it's probably important to have those relationships with the state.
Absolutely. It's extremely important to have.
Like you mentioned, have those relationships.
Yeah, it's more important. Relationships are important no matter what, because
exactly.
are how you get things done. They're how you build trust and how people know that when you say that you're going to do something, they understand that you're going to do the very best you can do because you develop that relationship. That's why it's so important for me to be out and about and meeting with our civic leagues, with our community members, programs like this, where you can let people know that you're open for suggestions, creativity, approachable, because that's how we're going to, one, change the perceptions about Portsmouth, and then two, that's how we're going to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish.
And we get back to that Portsmouth is for people, all types of people.
Yes.
We'll be back there again where we were in the 70s.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, Mrs. Jones, it is just so refreshing to see the relationship between the city and the school board, because those two entities must work together in order to make things better for our students.
Yes.
And we can't be one against the other. It has to work together. And Dr. Bracy is such a fine young man, and you're a fine young woman. So I know that the two of you can work together to
definitely
make the life better for our children here in the city of Portsmouth.
Definitely.
Now, go ahead. Go right ahead.
I'm going to say that it's critical as we talk about economic development that we talk about the quality of education.
Yes.
Many people locate to different places because of their perceptions of the education that their students can achieve. So we meet monthly, Dr. Bracy and I. We definitely understand that we do not have the resources to do everything we would like to do, but we know that it's a priority.
Wonderful.
Yes, but you know what?
Go ahead.
I got to get this one done right here. Is that we talked about relationships at the state level and And we have an election coming up for all state offices, from governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and so forth. And it's coming up. And then for those folks out there that like tolls and want to turn back the clock to not just the 70s, as Leah talked about, but turn it back to the 50s, you have a perfect candidate in the Republican governors, Youngkin, and he is your perfect governor. But if you want to go forward, you need to look at the Democratic Party and look what they're saying, and not listen to what Youngkin and his crowd is putting on with his Trump light putting on TV. So I just had to add that one in there. But the only power that people have to fight tolls and also to keep us moving forward is the power to go to the ballot and to vote. And if you don't, then you deserve everything you're going to get. Don't complain. So, but Ms. Jones, I have, as I got through that diatribe there.
I'm just glad you're not asking me any questions about that.
Okay.
Lane.
Yes, yeah, but I know you're supposed to be apolitical in
That's
your
right.
position. Yeah, so I spared you with that. So I recognize that. So I did spare you in that. But as you do your assessment and you look at different departments, and since we talk about crime and we're going to see the uptick of crime because we are opening up the economy, but that is never talked about on the right wing news media, because we haven't opened it up. So you're supposed to see it, statistically. And I look at the inner workings of our police department, and I see some rogue agents in there. And I'm not even going to ask you, I'm not even call out the same one that was suing Luis Lucas. I'm not going to call his name out. That has been a historically thorn in our side. But what are we going to do to cleanse some of our departments from these rogue agents that work against our departments?
Well, again, that
people.
the way to address that is to, one, have clear expectations,
Yes.
and to hold people accountable to those expectations. And that starts with having the leadership, the department directors that will do just that, define clear and measurable expectations of what employees are supposed to do, and then hold them accountable to that. Now, you can do that in an environment where you are paying them competitive wages and providing them good working conditions and ensuring that they receive training, that they stay abreast of what's going on. So all of that works together. And so when you have employees of that nature, then you address them appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And there shouldn't be any hesitation, because everything that you are holding them to should be written, it should be clear, and it should be measurable. So that and that impacts morale as well, because once you start holding people accountable, those that are loyal and performing their jobs in an excellent way are going to see that their efforts are not going unnoticed.
Exactly.
It's important that you use the word holding people accountable, and especially the people at the top. I've always grown up in my leadership positions and saying, and I've always observed that there's a lot of leaders that don't want anything to happen on their watch. So
Right.
they just want to blend in and be the shadow and all that. I always tell them, I don't need you in my organization if you can't change.
Right.
And you can't better this organization. I
Right.
don't need a flower on the wall. I don't need shadow. I need somebody that's going to be a dynamic and is going to take care of my people, meaning our workers, and
Right.
also the people that we work for, who are the citizens out on the street. They're going
Right.
to work every day. And then so that's what I call, and I'm going to hold you accountable because I got the power of the pen, and that's what you have.
Right. And just keep in mind, this is not a job for me. This is a purpose. This is I am only here because of who my source is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's who I serve. That's who I took an oath to, and
Yes.
that's who I'm responsible to. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm not doing the very best that I can do, then I'm not doing what I was set here to do.
Amen. Amen. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. I applaud you with that kind of attitude, and that's the way it should be. But so often that we got folks out here just, oh, I'm just trying to make my time so I can get to that retirement door. I don't need you. You may not. If you work for me, you ain't getting to that door. If you don't,
Right.
because I'm
Yeah.
gonna shut it and get
Yeah.
somebody in here is going to do the people's work.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Ms. Jones, I want to get into the historic piece about the city of Portsmouth. A lot of people say historic and tourism doesn't bring in a lot of money, but I think it's important for us to recognize historic significance in the Hampton Roads area. We talk a lot about Old Town's historic significance, but we have other communities such as Truxton, Craddock,
Yes.
and Parkview and Port Norfolk that are also historic communities. Do you see, would that be a part of what you want to do to make sure that we recognize the historic significance that we have? Because each city in the Hampton Roads region has a niche, like Virginia Beach, the beach, and Norfolk and Hampton have historic significance too. But Portsmouth has some significance here. I mean, we have colonial areas, so we have we were part of the Underground Railroad,
Yeah.
and I personally don't think we talk about it within our communities, but I don't think we spread the message enough outside of our communities about our historic significance in the region and in the country.
Right. And I would agree. Yes, I think that's important. And you mentioned the key operative word is niche. Defining that niche and what is it that we want to highlight, and being, that we can say that the Underground Railroad starts here and take it all the way to DC, to that museum, and try to have those connections. Those are things that we can do, and to start to define what that niche is. And I think that's going to be critical. I think the other point of that, though, is defining how you earn revenue from tourists. There are a multitude of ways that you earn revenue from tourists. One primarily being hotel stays. The other is restaurants and stores that they frequent, that those stores would get that increased activity to, help their bottom line. So you really have to, and again, that's a whole Dillon rule versus a home rule state. Those are limited by how those dollars and how that is defined here. But it still doesn't negate the fact that if this city was bustling with people from other areas frequenting the historic landmarks that we have, and understanding how it works for tourism, but it also works for educating our country about how things are and how we can start to unite, and just understanding that history.
You know what? You're talking about educating that history. We have a whole industry now. It's almost turned that doesn't want to know about our history, and it's a negative. And then this crazy theory of critical race theory, and trying to turn back the clock and deny our history is running rampant, especially on right-wing radio and in the right-wing TV, and actually the right wings from the Republican Party. And so it is. I never would have thought it in our nation, in my lifetime, that we'd come to this point in our lives where we were so close to actually losing our democracy. And it is a shame how far we've come, but how far we haven't come. So I had to add that to my commentary. And I'm not going to put you on the spot because I know you're waiting for me to hit you with one. Yes.
One last question, because I know we are quickly approaching that 7:30 hour. The problem with crime in the city of Portsmouth, what are we doing to address that? I know we've had a lot of people on this show who've talked about it from the mental health perspective, from the psychological perspective, from the sheriff and community leaders. What are we doing to address these issues with these children with guns?
Yeah, that's one that, that's a national crisis that we have, and that's not an excuse. We're looking at how we attack it through a multifaceted approach. It's going to have to be comprehensive. We can't throw enough police officers at crime to think that we're going to solve our kids with guns. That just doesn't work. So what I like to define is a public safety framework that looks at what those core issues are, what is driving it. And a lot of it is poverty,
It
a
is.
lack of hope, a lot of it is lost dreams. And so we have to look at how do we ensure that we can provide jobs, that we can provide mentors, that we can talk to the youth and find out what is it that's going to engage them, what are they dealing with, in our schools, in our communities, having programs. So we're looking at all of that. We're looking at training our police officers to be mental health certified so that they can de-escalate incidents so that they don't end up in the news about things that we're fighting all over the country.
Exactly.
So it's a multifaceted, comprehensive, complex issue that we're trying to address. And so we're just going to take it one step as we can identify solutions, implement them, move on to the next until we can start to move that count downward. We want to eliminate the issues of youth with guns and crime, black on black crime or
Yes.
blue on black or whatever the case may be. We want to eliminate that off the face of the earth.
Yes. Yes.
Wait, you know what? Can I ask you one question? This issue on the immunity for policemen. Where do you stand on that? And I have to ask because as a black man, if I get pulled over by while driving while black because I have a nice car, and I may lose my life over a $5 light bulb. Where do you stand on that?
I don't stand on any person being harassed, arrested, pulled over, whatever, based on the color of their skin. That is unacceptable and definitely will not be tolerated in any administration that I'm a part of.
Yes. How about the immunity piece for police force?
That I have to adhere to whatever the law is, and whatever the law is as it relates to that, I have to stay within that law. But that does not mean that I can't hold police officers accountable if they don't follow the standards that have been set for them. That's
Yes.
not that as a city manager I set.
Yes. Yes. That's a great answer.
As Ms.
Tough
Jones,
answer.
as
Tough
Leah,
question.
as Leah was saying, we're winding down. I just wanted to throw this in because I've always mentioned that I think sometimes we don't take advantage of. We have we have colleges, universities in the area that have these departments of psychology, of social work, and economic development and things like that. And sometimes cities don't use those resources from them. We'll go to Ohio, or we'll go to other places to bring in people to study certain things when we have the opportunities right here with our colleges and have students that are studying these things, especially human behavior. And we talked about that as far as the crime. How do you feel about including in some instances? I know sometimes you have to go out and get a professional to come in, but how do you feel about including some of the universities that are in their area, in the region, that have these departments that are well versed in some of the issues that we need to address?
Oh, I am totally supportive of including universities and have partnered with universities in other places to get some of our initiatives done. University of Oregon in Oregon was a perfect example of bringing our resources together, looking at policing on campus as well as off campus, ensuring that our police officers, the police officers on campus were trained. I totally support collaboration and partnerships, and any entity that's within our confines where it becomes productive that we can do so, especially with as near as the universities are in this Hampton region. That's a primary example of how we can form some better partnerships and collaboration. And I'll just mention here that's my mindset. I do believe partnerships are critical. I believe collaboration is critical, and we have to collaborate across. As mentioned several times during this presentation, Portsmouth is for the people, and there are all types of people in, and so we need to be partnering with all types of to ensure that we're moving Portsmouth forward. So whether it's universities, whether it's businesses, whether it's churches, whatever, we need to involve all of those stakeholders in the solution to moving Portsmouth forward.
Well, we really thank you. We're approaching the 7:30 hour, and I'll see if my co-hosts have any other questions, and then you will have the last word, Ms. City Manager.
Okay.
I just want to say I thank you so very much for agreeing to come on Portsmouth Coffee Talk. I hope this will not be the last time that we have you on. We appreciate all that you're doing for the city of Portsmouth. I think that you're bringing a breath of fresh air to the city of Portsmouth, and it's good that we have someone who can see through a different set of lens what we are going through and hopefully bring some solutions to those problems, and that we can once again get to be the city that everyone would want to come to and would like to be a part of. And economic growth is so important. Taxes need to be addressed because the tax rates are so high. But we appreciate you. We appreciate all that you're doing. And I think that with the approach that you're taking, it's going to make quite a difference, not only in your staff, but in the city in general. And I just thank you. And I thank you for being so open and so honest and agreeing to meet with the civic leagues and anyone who wants to come and sit down and talk with you and share their opinions. But I just say thank you so very much. Welcome to the city of Portsmouth.
Yes, and I'd like to echo what Leah said, but I'll have one thing different when she talked about high taxes. And I'm always one to say taxes is what keeps us from being a third world country. And but that'll be a different discussion on that when we talk about levels of taxes. So, but thank you for everything you're doing. And yes, you are a breath of fresh air. And this is you've addressed a lot of complex questions that have complex answers, and you've broken it down to so people can understand. And so I like to thank you for what you're going to do for us in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And I like to say, the last thing I like to say is, for real, the maroon and steel.
We'll let you have that since Norcom is maroon and gray. Okay.
We're from Norcom Union, same color.
Hey.
All right, Ms. Jones, you can, if you have any last words you'd like to say before we end, and surely we appreciate you getting up early and coming in, and we know you have another full day ahead of you.
Yes.
So we really appreciate that, and we will also have this later on YouTube channel, so more people will be exposed to it.
Okay. The only thing I would say is I'm grateful for this show and for your commitment to the city of Portsmouth. And I look forward to working with each of you as we move Portsmouth forward. We're going to change that negative perception. You have an angel here now.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
That's a delta.
It's good to have an angel in the house.
You have all the ingredients that's going on.
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned that Delta thing, because I usually mention members of Divine Nine when they're on here. Neither one of us, I remember my dad was a Kappa, but we had certain sections of people in the community that pushed back when they heard someone's a member of the Divine Nine. They think it's favoritism showing, but they should know that most people that go to college, especially HBCUs, are going to be a member of the Divine Nine. Right. And they come out with an attitude of excellence. So right. It's more about excellence than it is about favoritism and who that they go along with. And I just wanted to make that statement,
Yeah.
for the people that push back on that.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the whole pledging and becoming a part of a sorority, I looked to that because my family was limited, and I looked to that sorority to be my family. And it's a very humbling experience because you just don't walk in to any sorority. You have to earn your way in. And so those are characteristics that have stayed with me throughout my life, throughout my career, that I understand in order to be a good leader, I have to be a good follower.
Mhm.
And so I am here to learn, I'm here to improve, but I'm also here to participate. This is my home now, and I want it to be the best place that I could ever be. So that's it for me.
Yeah, so thanks again. We appreciate it. And we're going to look forward to having you on again
Okay.
throughout the year when issues come up that hopefully that you agree to come back on and talk to us again, because looking at the comments from some of the people, they were really enlightened by what you had to say.
Right, right.
They like your openness and getting that information, especially that Dillon rule. A lot of people don't realize how
Mhm.
restricting that can be to some cities.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
they need to get out there. Okay. All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a great day. And Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice.
Our community.
In our future.
We appreciate it. And we'll see you next Monday as our guest will be Onyx Hicks, one of our citizens who is an author, who is a community activist.
Radio personality.
Personality and Facebook personality. She will be on next week to talk with us about all the things that she's doing. We appreciate you. We appreciate your support, and take care and have a good day. God bless you.
God bless.
God bless. Yes.
God bless.
Thank you, our angel.
Yeah.